let me know if you relate to being too smart for your own good. But it's like you're just too smart. You're smarter than everybody, like you know the answer. Somebody has a problem, you can directly see the conclusion and like perceive it from so many different angles. And you're into game theory, so you're always thinking about things in different angles, and you're always being able to hold multiple thoughts at the same time, and you can see the pros and cons, and like it's very clear to you what the answer is because you're very clear-minded and you're very critical and analytical. And of course, when you go to therapy, nobody can help you because you're smarter than your therapist. You know what I mean? Like, what are they going to tell you that you don't already know? You already thought about this. Analyzed it from this angle. You already went in and dissected that event, and you understand all of these different things. And now you're in a position where you're just too smart for your own good. Is that you? Sit down. Listen, this is a perfectionism loop. Okay. This is when you're very smart. That's not in question. But emotional intelligence is at question. So, what happens for a lot of perfectionists who are very smart, they are able to analyze from so many different angles. And like the linear logical way to heal through a thing or how to think through a thing. But do you know how to feel through it? And that's the part where a lot of perfectionists, people pleaser, overthinkers, self-doubters, they're looping in this very tragic yet predictable cycle. So what basically happens for you when you're in a cycle like that is that you've thought it through many times. So up here you understand, but in your physical body you haven't processed. Your emotions are still sitting in your physical body numb. So the suppression, because you're like doing it all yourself and you're the strong person and you are just like smart, like you don't know how to feel. And that's the type of emotional intelligence that is needed for your healing journey to actually integrate and for you to have, the breakthrough that you're looking for. So, what basically this means is let's use an exact example. So, I'm just going to pull one from the sky that say you know that the reason that you have these X, Y, and Z issues in your life, the reasons that you pick these partners, or the reasons that your relationships turn out a certain way, or the reason that your friendships are a certain way, it stems from your daddy issues, right? Like, in your head, like, oh, because I was abandoned when I was 5, that's why I behave this way. Like, I'm afraid that everybody's going to leave me, so I'm just pretending like I don't need them, or I'm like too clenchy, or I understand. And so all the clinical terms, about the all the avoidant attachment theories, and about like all the different like clinical terms of how to think about your behavior. But do you actually know how to feel the thing that this little 5-year-old girl felt when you experienced that abandonment? Do you know how to experience the sadness, the confusion, the anger, the resentment, the bitterness, the muffling, the murkiness of it all? Has your body actually physically processed this moment in time that is resulting in the behaviors that you have right now? So for a lot of perfectionists, when they go and approach their healing journey, they basically think that you can think your way out of something that your body processes. So if I really logically understand what anger is, then like that doesn't mean that I know how to process it, or I know how to express it, or I don't feel guilty or shame around processing anger. Because anger, I'm not supposed to be angry. I'm not supposed to yell and shout and like be mad at somebody who's not even in my life. Like that feels like it's taking my power away from me. Like no, I'm not that, because like logically, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do expressing anger about something that already happened in the past? Like, logically, there's no need to be angry, but physiologically, somatically, and psychosomatically, meaning mind body connectionally, your body actually does need to express the emotion that is spent so long suppressing. Okay. And that sometimes is a really difficult concept for a lot of overthinkers and perfectionists because they say, "Oh, how am I supposed to feel? How am I supposed to feel?" Well, feeling is not a how, it's a state of being. So how do you feel anger? Like, is there an emotion that you can think of that you experience that it's like, I can't tell you to feel that, right? Like you feel it or you don't feel it. It just is. It's a moment of being. And the thing about emotions is, you've heard me say this many times, is that emotions are energy in motion. Essentially, you've ever heard of E equals MC squared? E stands for energy. So emotion also in the word, it stands for energy in motion. So energy doesn't want to stay still. So when you're suppressing it, you're contracting it and you're keeping it in a certain part of your body. It doesn't want to be there. You know what I mean? And as smart as you are, you need to let it go. As smart as you are, you can't think your way out of an emotion that is physically sitting in your physical body. So emotions, when they're suppressed, they need to be expressed. Right. So it's like, all right, well, if it's the emotion of anger, maybe I can't think my way out of anger. I actually have to shout. I actually have to make an ugly face and I have to say, fuck you. I'm mad at you for leaving me when I'm a fucking child. And why the fuck did you do that? And it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to say these words. Like, these words are bad words. I'm not supposed to say it because that's not demure, like that. I'm not supposed to say that kind of stuff. And so there's that guilt and that shame of like, I don't want to see myself as an angry person, but the fact that you're experiencing anger doesn't make you an angry person. It just makes you somebody who's experiencing anger, like a person, and so like if you're experiencing sadness doesn't make you a sad person. It means that you're experiencing sadness or you're experiencing happiness. There's this fluctuating fluid way of being in life that is the gamut of human emotions. And so what the mind doesn't allow you to experience is the expression of the emotion, which is like, I need to go punch, or like I need to go punch a bag and I'm going to go to kickboxing class and I'm going to do, jumping jacks and I'm going to do all these different things and I'm going to yell, I'm going to shout, I'm going to express it out of my voice and my face is going to look ugly when I do that and my voice is going to sound mean and am I mean, right? Like that's the that's the feeling that you're wanting to bring to the surface and your body's going to resist that. And part of the emotional intelligence is being able to manage and deal with emotions that come up. And a lot of us don't have that emotional intelligence because we are used to suppressing it. We also might have sensory considerations. We might have stimulus considerations. There's different things to consider as well. From this perspective of suppressing your emotions, it really dysregulates your nervous system. It puts you in a state of survival all the time where you're feeling like you need the answer because I already figured out the answer of why I'm angry. I already figured out why I'm sad. So why can't I just not be sad? I already figured it out. But did you feel it? You're smart up here, but emotionally, not that smart. You know what I mean? Sorry, I like hurting feelings today. But it's like, yeah, mind can only heal what the mind can conceive, and the rest processes in the physical body. And your physical body needs the permission to be able to express emotions that are really uncomfortable. And so, look at your life, like, have you ever had a safe place to express emotions, period, and that particular emotion? So as a child, and let's go back to daddy issues, right? Like as a child, were you able to express that you were angry, or was your mom who was trying to compensate for the fact like the very confusing thing just happened in all of your lives and she's just now trying to scramble and she's in survival mode and she has other people, your siblings, to take care of and she's in this like hyper aroused mode and she's just trying to make sense of her own emotions. She didn't have time for your anger. Shut up. You know what I mean? Like she didn't have time for you to feel that. She just needed you to behave. She just needed you to, be good, do your homework, eat your snacks, get in the car, do all this kind of stuff. So you didn't really have a place to express the fact that you were feeling angry. So when you became a teenager, this anger probably came to the surface where now you're just like, I don't need anybody. I'm here doing everything by myself. Whether that's true or not, it's a perception. But your physical body, because of the suppression of the suppression of that emotion, anger, it doesn't necessarily know how to communicate that. And when you're little, when you're 5, like, how would you know how to communicate that? Would be like, I need to somatically process this through my body. Like, of course, you don't know this when you're 5. You don't know when this is when you're 30. You don't know this is when you're 50. Like, unless someone tells you, right? Unless we were having this conversation and we're saying, like, oh, wow, there is something physiologically happening in my body that I cannot heal just by thinking through it. I cannot heal this by just being smart, just up here, not emotionally, right? And so this is the time when you're trying to get out of that perfectionism loop, and perhaps you don't actually understand that you're in a loop that way where, you're just smarter than everybody. Perhaps it is that you're smarter in analytics, but not in emotions. And the emotions is what allows you to fully heal. This is the process, this is the pathway that allows the mind and body to talk to each other. So the mind knows it's daddy issues, but the physical body says, I need to process this from my body. the sadness, I need to feel this out. So this doesn't necessarily mean going back to your past and like dissecting every event and reliving those events. If you like suffering, you can do that. Like we can go back to like every single event. And oftentimes that's why therapy can be very re-triggering, because you're just like talking about the same thing over and over again. And there's no like solution. There's no psychosomatic solution. There's no conclusion to that. There's no release or resolution to this. It's just I'm talking about it and now I have awareness, and that's great. But from awareness, where do you take it next? Right? So you identified the issue. The next step is to actually de-shame what you feel about it. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I am a sad girl, or oh my gosh, I am an angry man, I'm an angry woman, or like enter the emotion, you got to de-shame your process for that, because there's emotions that you've been holding since your early whenever that wasn't your fault. Like how are you going to blame a 5-year-old for their father going? You know what I mean? Like, how are you going to say, like, oh my gosh, you deserved sadness, or you deserved abandonment, you deserved rejection, you deserved, all the emotions that came from experiencing rejection and abandonment, like feeling like you're not good enough. You're not being selected. You're not being picked. You're not being accepted for who it is that you are. And for a 5-year-old's mind, that doesn't translate, and so like you spend your entire life trying to come up with the reason, like, oh yeah, my dad did that because and I bet you're like a father apologist. You know what I mean? Like you're like making reasons for like why that was okay, right? Because that gives you the comfort in your mind to know that it wasn't you. And when the truth is that it wasn't you, that feeling needs to also translate into your body, because your nervous system isn't a head thing. It is a physical body. It is a system of nerves in your physical body that always determine whether or not you feel safe. So if you don't feel safe, you can't convince yourself that. You know what I mean? Like your body's still going to be on edge. It's like saying something that you don't fully believe. It's like logically you understand, and that was the best decision for your father, and that was the best thing, and actually you guys are fine, and it actually was the best thing for your family, because look, everybody's happy and everybody's good. Okay, who are you trying to convince, me or you? You know what I mean? Like, okay, cool, like if that's the story you want to tell, but what do you actually feel? Don't give me the resume answer, give me like the shit, give me the real stuff. That's like, I'm fucking angry, I hate him. Oh, shit, you're not supposed to say that. That's your dad, Oh, no. Oh, okay. So you identified, then you de-shame. You de-shame the process of experiencing this emotion. And the last part of this process is you have to flow through it, because it's not just like I identified, I felt it one time. There might be many iterations of experiencing that emotions and many layers of that. So first, you might say, all right, well, I felt abandoned. Okay. Layer to that is I felt rejected. Another layer beneath that is like, I actually don't feel like I was good enough. And layer beneath that is like, I'm sad, right? So there's always like another layer to unpack. And at the core of it is really sadness, And if we're not able to experience sadness because, one, we don't want to go into a depression spiral, like fair, and you understand logically that it doesn't make sense for you to be sad because nothing's like wrong in your life, right? Logically, you understand, but psychosomatically, you actually do need to go through that experience of sadness. And the way to do that is in containers that can hold space for that. And you have to expand your nervous system's capacity to experience that discomfort of that emotion. Because if sadness is not something you deal with like on the regular, or it is something that you encounter on the regular, but you suppress it on the regular. So your body's not really experienced in being able to hold sadness. And it really just like fucks you up. It makes you feel like, now I'm going to go spiral. Now I'm going to go into panic. Now I'm feeling anxiousness. That is very true. Like your body will respond to that. So it's important to understand that when you're training your nervous system to experience uncomfortable emotions, that your capacity of your nervous system might not be where you want it to be on day one. And I equate emotional intelligence the same as training your physical body, right? So for example, like if you're wanting to run a 5K, today maybe you can't run a 5K, but you have to like eventually gradually work up to that. So today maybe it's like you just make it out the block, you just like walked around the block and you're like huffing and puffing, and that was hard. You know what I mean? Good job, but that puts you further towards your goal of this 5K 3 miles that you want to run, you know? So every day you just incrementally go a little bit further, a little bit further. And some days you're like, yeah, did up to 1 mile, but actually today's a half a mile day. Like just can't do a 1 mile. So there's going to be that fluctuation of progress as well. So emotional capacity is kind of the same too, is that sometimes like you could just go out and you can run a 5K. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, I didn't even train for this and I can do it. Ha. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, cool. Like nice, right? And then that's an experience where a lot of people have like breakthrough when they do breath work and it's just like boom, like but then there's the more common experience, which is that there's an incremental shift in your nervous system where it's like, okay, uncomfortable. Let me go to my growth edge. And then it's like, okay, more uncomfort, like more discomfort, more discomfort. And eventually it works its way up to be able to deal with the actual truth of the emotion that it's been suppressing. So oftentimes this doesn't look like, okay, let me have a big fucking breakthrough and just like, do one breath work and do one session. It's like, like I've done miracles, but like I don't promise miracles. You know what I mean? I promise sustained healing, like sustainable nervous system regulation, which actually does take time. So for your physical body to experience your growth edge and then sit with it and then go a little bit further and sit with it and go a little further, sit with it, go a little further, da, 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 to the point where it's like, okay, now my body is handling the capacity. So one day you were not able to run around the block, and then all of a sudden you're doing a mile. You know what I mean? And it's like if on day one you expected to do a mile, you might have been met with failure because you're like, I just can't, and it's too hard. That it just feels like it's too far from where I presently am. Like it's too far in my reach. So half a mile was great, or half a block is great for now. But then all of a sudden you're at this mile, and then you get to celebrate. So same thing with emotional intelligence and training your emotional intelligence is that you're not going to be, like at a mile day one. Sometimes like you might start, your baseline might be at a mile. So then that's where we start as well. And then you can expand it to a mile and a half, and you expand it to 2 miles, you expand it that way. Okay. So long story short, you know what I mean? It's like, are you as smart as you think you are? You know what I mean? And I say this as myself, which is that I'm a queen of analysis. I love knowing why. So I will never discredit somebody for wanting to know why, and also many things can be true at the same time, right? To have mental intelligence and have logical linear processes of like, why something happened or why something is happening, and have an understanding of your behavior versus being able to chemically and psychosomatically shift that are two different experiences. And for myself personally, I'll give you a little personal share, which is that when I was able to really experience sadness, and for me it was sadness, it wasn't anger, like I really like I broke down. You know what I mean? Like my body just like felt like it opened up in capacity. It opened up in its energy because I was just like not clenching anymore. So it's like you don't have to hold, you don't have to hold, you don't have to hold. And there was this moment where it was just like an unclench. And I was like, euphoric. It felt like this cathartic release where I wasn't like, I need to cry. And this is like, it didn't look like what I thought expressing sadness would look like repeating a story or saying, logically, like what the problem was. Like, I've already said that. I already know what the fucking story is. You know what I mean? I need to feel that. I need to feel the expression of the emotion in my physical body. And for me, that like opened up a whole lot. It allowed me to be more real with myself and more truthful with myself, and to approach even other things that I needed to think about in a different way, and other things I needed to feel in a different way as well. And just the process of that is just this beautiful unfolding. So the framework here is identify, and then you de-shame, so you're not just like being so hard on yourself about like the emotion that comes up, and then you flow through it. And that's the process that I just described, where it's like you're going to ebb and flow between like where it is that you are on any given day. It's not going to be a win or a loss, a win or a lose. It's like, okay, this is where I am today, and that's the capacity of my nervous system to be able to do with that. So that is emotional intelligence at the end of the day. It's not really about like trivia questions or like, how good you are at solving problems logically. It's also about being able to feel through the human emotions that make this, really yeah, confusing existence a little bit more exciting. It allows you to experience things from a little bit more of a human perspective with more compassion, more grace, a little bit more love for yourself in the meantime. So, friends, I hope this episode helped you. If you're not already subscribed, definitely subscribe. And I'd love for you to take the perfectionism quiz. It's on www.alwaysplay.org/perfection. And it's going to tell you 4 categories of perfectionism that you might fall under. So if you're a smarty pants, like, yeah, go ahead and take that and let me know what you get as your perfectionism archetype. And of course, if you're interested to learn breathwork, become a breathwork facilitator, or you want to come do breathwork to learn how to expand the capacity of your nervous system, I'll leave you some resources and links in the show descriptions so that you can click right onto it. All right, friends, just remember the world is your playground. And until next time, I will catch you soon.